Ragnar Drums is the latest virtual instrument from Solemn Tones, and it is a drum library that's ready to punch you in the throat. This library has some of the most epic and monstrous drums that I've ever had the pleasure of using in a production or playing with at my e-kit. So here's a demonstration of the kit in action with an original song that I call Judgment Warrior. Enjoy. And there it is. If you like how those drums sound in particular, that is a custom built kit that I did within the plugin. You could go to arcanearrow.com and download that preset for free to use with your copy of Ragnar Drums. And if that song and performance was enticing for you, you can watch the full video right here or linked in the description below. I would like to start this video off by saying that Ragnar Drums was provided to me for free from Solemn Tones in exchange for a video review. No monetary transaction was made between myself and Solemn Tones does not get to preview this video review before it goes live. This drum library has so much to offer you, including 5 snares, 5 kicks, 5 toms, 18 cymbals, and a cowbell, because why not? More cowbell is always welcome. Ragnar Drums is also its own standalone plugin within your DAW, so no contact or contact player is needed. They have a one-shot loader available on the kick, the snare, and the toms if you want to add your own samples and beef up the already existing beefy tones that are in there. They also give you all the TCI files separately, so that way if you want to load up these kit pieces in your own triggering devices, you can do that. You can pick up your copy of Ragnar Drums at solemntones.com right now for the introductory price of $99 US. If you don't catch it within this introductory window discounted price, it will then cost you $129. Typically, I like to provide a score for any drum library that I might review, and that would look just as simple as blank out of 10, and then give you the reasons why I give you that score. However, this drum library for me is a little bit of a pickle. As the title suggests, I approach these reviews as an e-kit player first, not a manual drum programming person or somebody who uses Midi groove packs. So for Ragnar Drums, I'm officially going to divide this into 2 separate scores. If you are an individual who uses drum libraries and you program your own drums, meaning you draw in your own Midi for your performance or you use Midi groove packs, if you're in that camp, the score for this kit is going to be a 9.5 out of 10. Honestly feel that this library earned that 9.5 just purely for the ease and functionality of customizing the drum sounds if you so want to. Other than that, the presets right out of the box sound humongous. I mean, honestly, they're some of the biggest drums that I've ever just preloaded, hit some drums. It was like, wow. And we'll get to that when we demo some of the presets over at the e-kit. Now, if you're like me and you're an e-kit player first with these drum libraries, the score that I'm going to give Ragnar Drums is a 5 out of 10. Believe me, I know that probably seems steep or harsh, but I do have some pretty good examples and reasons why I'm providing that score. The library itself does come with a few quirks that are primarily eKit related. However, there are a couple little glitches or bugs that can be improved upon if you are a programmer or someone that likes to build out and customize the kits within the library. One of those being all of the faders, regardless if you're in the main drum page menu or within the mixer menu. When you mouse click on a fader to change its value, every click the value tends to change pretty drastically, even though you haven't moved the mouse at all. So every time I was trying to dial in my sound, I would have to take note of where the value was, because every time I would click, it would either jump up or down in value from my initial starting point. So for the developers, hopefully that's a pretty easy fix, that they just need to kind of decrease the sensitivity of clicking on those faders, because some of the sensitivity for the dials in the effects page are not sensitive at all. And it actually takes quite a bit of mouse dragging to be able to get some of those dials to actually turn to their next setting. Another quirk that I discovered before we hop over to the eKit critiques I have was when I built my custom kit within this library, when I got to the very last channel, which was assigning an extra crash cymbal to the kit, as soon as I did that, all of a sudden there was no sound playing with the drum library at all. And I scoured this thing all over thinking clearly I had hit a mute button somewhere to like shut off the sound of the whole kit, but that wasn't the case. So my workaround from my custom kit, and if you happen to download this preset and you wonder why is it like this, this is why. All of the individual instruments have their solo button turned on that I'm using for this in particular custom build. And then once all those solo buttons are on, then the kit plays and sounds exactly how it should. I do have the mute button on in particular instrument channels of things I'm not using, like a splash or the cowbell. But with all those solo buttons on, you get sound. With all the solo buttons off, as you would usually experiment with a kit, there is no sound. That is one of the issues that I personally addressed with Solemn Tones, providing them my custom preset so the development team can look at it and see what is exactly going on there. So not sure what caused it, but it is unfortunately there, and it is what I would consider an issue worthy of deducting some marks off of that perfect 10 score that I would love to give this library. So without further ado, let's hop over to the eKit so we can start dissecting this library one feature and function, or lack thereof, at a time. And that way I can really show and demonstrate to you why I provided a 5 out of 10 score as an eKit player. Let's go. All right, we're over at the eKit. The kit that you see in front of you here is the Roland TD27. This is the KV1, not the KV2, if that matters to you. But either way, this has been an exceptional electronic drum kit and has delivered with every task and performance that I've asked of it, including playing with drum libraries. The DAW that I'm doing this demonstration in today is Logic Pro. And before I get into any sort of sounds and presets demonstration playing at the kit, I do want to address the critiques that I have for this library as an eKit player first. As I said, if you're a programmer, you're well off to the races in a very positive direction. If you're an eKit player, there are a few issues that might be considered drawbacks if you want to use this library with your eKit. Now, I do want to say every issue that I've found, I have sent very detailed reports and videos to Solemn Tones to show them exactly the issues that I'm encountering. And I would like to say that the reception has been exceptionally positive. I've actually been having a dialogue with the owner of Solemn Tones, and a lot of the points that I brought up, he has responded and confirmed that these are issues that will certainly be repaired or fixed for their first official update that they roll out with the library. Some of the questions that I've asked at the time of recording this video have still not been answered yet. So I will make certain to keep you updated in the comment section or the description of this video if and when I hear back from them, if these kind of unanswered things have any sort of future plan of getting fixed. So as I go down my list of these critiques, I will make sure to also mention this is something I've gotten a reply back on and is for sure coming out with their first update. But the thing you need to keep in mind right now, because I do not know when their first official update will roll out, hopefully it's sooner than later. Now, at the time of this video going live, these in particular issues, as far as I'm concerned, will deliver with the kit when you purchase it. So let's get started. Let's go over these things one at a time. All right, I am going to can up so that way we can hear everything together at the same time. All right. So what's great about Ragnar Drums is they're their own standalone plugin like many drum library developers are starting to do nowadays. So you just go to Solemn Tones, Ragnar Drums. I'm going to do a stereo output. In no contact needed. And then when the UI opens up, we get this very beautiful, looks like a very powerful drum library popping up. So let's get into our functionality as an eKit player. The very first thing that I did was go to the MIDI mappings page, as I'm sure a lot of you would do, because the first thing you want to do is get your kit talking to the library. And so to be honest, I didn't really look at the sample and MIDI note selection area first. The first thing I noticed was this drop-down menu. They do have some pre-established mappings available, albeit a little bit smaller than other drum libraries at this price point. But what do you know? They have the Roland TD27. So the first thing I did was I clicked on that. And then I looked over at the assignment areas for each sample. And everything looked pretty right on. But then the first thing that I noticed was there were only single note assignments. And for anyone that uses a Roland TD27, we all have 2 zones available for assignment on every pad, at least 2 zones. And so when I came over to this box just to click and see what was going on, when I click on the boxes, I noticed there was no MIDI list popping up. And so that kind of threw me off. I thought, oh, and then when I click these plus or minus symbols, all that does is move that in particular MIDI note up or down one. And so without seeing a MIDI list, and this is going to be totally on me, but I do want to bring it up with you in case you're kind of a little bit aloof like I am. Since there wasn't a MIDI list, I thought that this was the primary assignment box. And since we're used to seeing this symbol as an indicator you don't want to sample here, I thought just by selecting this box, that means for the left kick, I don't want to sample. So, but it turns out that these are actually both learn boxes. And so without having a list that you can actually scroll through and select MIDI notes, if you by chance already know your eKit's mapping notes, in this case, you would either have to double click and delete that and then manually type it in, or see how that symbol shows up now. You can select it, hit learn once, and then of course you could come over to this section if you have something. Well, why don't we use this crash symbol as an example, because this currently only has 1 sample assigned to it, which is going to be the bow of the cymbal. And so yeah, when I had opened this library, I was hitting the edges of cymbals and not hearing anything. And I was like, there's no way they sent and delivered a library that only has 1 assignment per pad or sample. But no, all you got to do is come over here and then hit learn. And now I'm going to hit the edge of this crash. And now I have a functioning cymbal that I am very used to as far as other drum libraries are concerned. So it's a little bit strange to me that their pre-assignment for something popular like a TD17 or a TD27 only came with single note assignments. So that's something I would like to see, not only just more eKit configurations pre-mapped inside of the MIDI section, but also to appropriately assign all of the available triggers that we can use. And so at this point, what you would have to do is go through and manually put in all those extra samples that you want on your eKit. And after you do that, and I'm not going to do that here because I already have a mapping configuration saved. So let's say that this is the MIDI mapping configuration that I wanted to save. when I come over to these buttons here, the import and the export, when you click on them, absolutely nothing happens. And so you're wondering, how do I get this saved in here? This is one of those critiques that I have gotten a reply back on that they plan on implementing a fix for, because right now it's a little bit of finger ballet, especially if you're on a track-padded laptop. So what I would have to do to save this mapping configuration is I would have to grab the export and do a left click and hold. And now you can see I have a file here. And I would then have to come tab over to like my desktop and then just come here and drag and drop it. And this map that's already on my desktop is the proper TD27 configuration. So I'm actually going to say stop, but that's how you move a map out of Ragnar Drums. And then, like now, we have a brand new session open and my mapping configuration is not saved directly within the plugin itself. What I then have to do is go to, like, my desktop, grab this, Command Tab over to the library and hover over import, and you can see it turn green, and there is my TD27 mapping. Now, I don't know about you, but that is definitely a major turnoff for me when I just want to plug and play and get going with my kit. So thankfully, that is going to be improved upon. How? I'm not entirely sure yet. That was left a little open-ended, but I'm assuming that they will hopefully have some sort of save option that will populate in that list for you, so that way you can address everything there. The next thing I want to point out is the ride cymbal only has 2 samples allocated to the ride in the library. You do not get an edge crash. And so the way that you can then get yourself a crash cymbal on your ride, so this is your main ride right here, and that's gonna feature the bow and the bell. If you want a crash cymbal, what you have to do is come over to, this is your extra cymbal. And let me show you real quick, like in the mixer, we have a channel that's called extra. That represents this symbol right here. So if I do a drop down, crash 1 is actually going to be stereo panned a little bit more to the left to represent where this crash is. Crash 2 is a little bit more stereo panned to the right. So I'm gonna use crash 2 since the ride is favored a little bit more to the right-hand side. And we can just select, let's say, the Zildjian crash. And then if I click it, there, we have it there. And then we go back to our MIDI mapping page, and that extra symbol assignment shows up right down here at the bottom. And so the MIDI note assignment for this in particular ride's edge is B2. Now we have a crash cymbal assigned to the edge of the ride. And so you do just want to make sure you go to the second option up from the bottom and learn that MIDI note, save your map, and then that MIDI note will always be now assigned to the edge of your ride. However, I will show you real quick, if I do change the kit to just a different preset, the edge of your ride immediately defaults back to the bow sound of the ride cymbal. And you'll always, every new preset, have to reassign a crash cymbal to the edge of your ride, if that's what you want. And that's something that I am not certain is going to be addressed with a future update. And then if we come over here to our hi-hat section, you're gonna notice that we don't have any extra pages to go to learn a CC for the hi-hat. Now this is a pretty big one that is certainly a contributor to my score for this as an E-kit player. Having that CC learn is just, I think, vital, because every hi-hat's different, every hi-hat height is different depending on where you have your clutch set. Overall, a CC learn is going to allow the hi-hat to perform better for us as the E-kit player. So if we take a look back over here at the hi-hat, we can see that we only have hi-hat open, which when the hi-hat is up, you can assign to your bow and your edge, and then your hi-hat close sample that you can assign to the bow and the edge. There clearly has to be some sort of CC in here. It's just not available to us as a user. Otherwise, how does it know that the hi-hat is open or closed? And then we, of course, have just our pedal chick sound. So while we are talking about this hi-hat, though, I do want to point out that since we don't have control of the CC and we don't have any way to learn it into the software, I have a lot of issues with hi-hat play in this library. And let me just give you a quick demo example of this. I'm going to close the hats, and then I'm going to play between the bow and the edge. I'm only going to slightly lift my foot, and the hats will technically still be closed, and we're immediately going to be triggering an open hi-hat sound. Here's that demo. And then if I push it back down, but as far as I'm concerned, the hi-hat, here's what it looks like open. And then close. It has to be a very intentional hard push with your foot on this pedal to confirm you are getting a closed hat sample. And we have a little bit more to talk about the hi-hats and their functionality with potentially polyphonic aftertouch, but let's put a bookmark in that because I do especially want to address that once we're done with the Midi mapping page. Another point about having no CC learn available for the hi-hat, I am not sure if we actually have any samples available for tight all the way to open and all that middle ground of hi-hat samples. At the way this map looks and the way it performs, something tells me that we only have closed hat samples and open hat samples, and you're not going to be able to get any in between. It is just open to close. For those of you that do enjoy a little bit more of a middle washed hi-hat sound, as of right now, that's not something that we can access or have available to us. So in regard to anything with the hi-hat and MIDI mapping, meaning other available samples or the CC learn, those are questions that have been asked to Solemn Tones that I have not gotten a reply on yet. So stay tuned. Hopefully we get some answers there. So really the last thing that I want to address on the MIDI mappings page is the velocity curves section. Now, if you're familiar with using curves inside of your drum library, all it's going to do is just change the velocity expressions or hits that you're putting into the library. And that allows you to play either just more consistently loud, meaning that if you were to gently hit the snare drum, a very loud velocity would trigger inside of there. Now here's my gripe with this section is they give you 4 in particular curves to use, a linear, this exponential like swoop up, and then this would start off really strong. And that's a loud velocity hit. In their little PDF manual that comes with the library when it's purchased, they do say specifically for the velocity curves that this in particular slope is what should be used if you're an E-kit player because it resembles the most natural play on an E-kit. I'm gonna have to disagree with that, unfortunately. Out of the 4, yes, that definitely works the best on the E-kit. I do think they need to make it available that the velocity curves can actually just be turned off because a lot of our velocity control comes from our module, and we don't potentially need any extra help within the plugin itself. And also there are import and export options available here that I don't even know what kind of file or where you would design your own custom velocity curve to be able to put into here. So I'm kind of thinking that is just if you wanted to have the toms linear and then everything else wild, you're only able to export this Ragnar Drums velocity map out and then re-import it back in, similar to the MIDI mappings page. So we're just gonna change all those back down to the recommended velocity curves. And then for the velocity curves, that is not something that I wrote in an email or demonstrated on a video for Solemn Tones. Hopefully they check this video out, which I think they will. And this is kind of my way of showing you guys at Solemn Tones now. I think that's also something that could be addressed as an E-kit player. We're almost to preset playthrough time, which I'm really excited to do because as much as it doesn't really feel good to be pointing out these in particular critiques, especially being provided the drum library, I'd rather be honest and transparent with my audience here and with the developer themselves, so that way everybody can win in the end. Solemn Tones can improve upon this library and just make it a true competitor for other libraries that are in this price point, because the sounds that come with this kit are epic. I do truly love this library and I'm looking forward to using it more. I would just like there to be more functionality as an eKit player with the library. But this right here is one of the bigger critiques, and I could tell you for certain, Solemn Tones is immediately looking into this because this is a very big issue as an eKit player and trying to record your drums with this library. And I'm gonna demo it for you right now. It doesn't matter what mapping or what preset you have pulled up. This little glitch, unfortunately, does happen across the board. Now, what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna hit the hi-hat and play an open hi-hat sample sound. And let's record, and I wanna make sure that we're both hearing the same thing at the same time. Oh, we don't need a click. All right, we all heard an open hat sound, right? Now if I go back and do playback, we've got closed samples playing and one of them was open. That to me is such a big issue because clearly I didn't have my foot anywhere near the pedal and we shouldn't be getting closed hat samples. So this brings me up to another thing that I did ask them about that currently I have not gotten a response on. Does this kit offer polyphonic aftertouch? The ability to choke cymbals, because no matter what I do, I cannot get this thing to choke. But the reason I bring that up is because my fix for this, if you want open hat samples but you're getting closed, in Logic Pro, if I go to Window, and then I go down to the Open Event List, and this is, if you haven't experimented with this yet, this is an incredibly precise way to manipulate and edit your Midi data that you put into your performance or your song you're working on. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to deselect everything except for polyphonic aftertouch, which we can see when polyphonic aftertouch is the only option available to show where data is, we have data. And so if I select one of these and then just Command A to select them all and delete them, now listen to playback. We have open hats. So my conclusion is that maybe down the line, there's going to be some polyphonic aftertouch available for us to actually choke our cymbals. But as of right now, whatever's going on with their polyphonic aftertouch settings in this library are massively affecting the hi-hats. Now, as you can see, that was a pretty simple fix, but the problem would be a lot of people aren't aware of the event list editor in their DAW and wouldn't know how to navigate to that. Instead, they would just spiral and get so frustrated grabbing that MIDI and moving those notes around. If I undo, and we hear the closed hat samples, if I just click the MIDI, you can hear it's an open hat sample. Point being is not even for the novice user, just for those who aren't aware of their event editor in their DAW, that is going to be an insanely frustrating thing to come across. Like I said before, not certain when their patch update is going to roll out. Let's hope it's soon, because that is going to affect a lot of people that want to record. Let's get back on the positivity train now and let's start playing through some of these presets. And I'm just gonna kind of do some pretty simple hitting around the kit just so you can really hear like how boomy these toms get, how deep the kick is, how realistic and authentic all the shells and the cymbals sound. So let's get started with that. We have different process modes that you could select here, and that's gonna very drastically change the sound of the kit. So why don't we just choose the very first one that's available within the library. Oh, and let's point out real quick while we're here. So if you see this down here, auto double kick, if I was to just do anything sort of remotely closely syncopated, you could see with the UI that just one kick drum is being played. Well, I understand that they took a lot of time to actually properly sample two existing double kick drums from the same kit. So that way you get a very authentic replication of what two kick drums would sound like. And I have to agree that they really knocked it out of the park with this one. You might want to can up for this just so you can really hear the subtle nuance differences. But here's the exact same little syncopation, and you can hear the difference of the two kicks. That's pretty awesome. And so if you are an E-kit player, I think that you should just always leave that on whenever you're just playing with the library, or if you are working on a performance for a song or something video related. Oh yeah, I forgot. I have one more quick little critique I would like to bring up. God, I'm sorry, Solemn Tones. But like I said, I just got to be honest. The snare drum, I think we have a beautiful sample of a snare drum. And I love that you guys offer a rim click. Now, inside of the MIDI mappings page, you have the ability to assign what they call a snare rimshot. Now, where I think this library differs very much from other libraries when it comes to a rimshot is other libraries' rimshots I feel are fully sampled rimshots. Whoever the performer was just cracking. This library in particular, if I was to hit the center of the snare really hard and then hit the rim click, that is what their rim shot actually is. If you headphone up, you can hear it. Because actually, while I was editing my performance, when I would do some of my snare work, I would all of a sudden just hear clicks. And I'm like, I know I didn't rim click during this performance. And then, yeah, come to find out, your rim shot is just a snare sample and a rim click mixed together. It's not, in my opinion, a true rim shot sample, unless your rim shot was just the snare at the hardest velocity you can hit it, but then that has to be the center. So there's a difference between hitting the center of the snare and then doing rim shots. I don't know. To me, I find the click kind of unfavorable. So I don't know what kind of mixing sauce you guys have planned with that snare drum going forward, if it's going to stick or stay. But to me, I'm more likely to move all of my snare samples to the center head just because I don't want that cross stick sound in my snare drum. But hey, what are reviews for, right? It's a personal opinion of mine. You could take it, you can leave it. I'm just a guy who plays E-drums, and I just wanted to be honest and transparent. But let's keep moving forward. There's smash kits. These are humongous. I really like the kick drum on this one. This is definitely a very metal kick drum. Okay, so that'd be another critique, is if you click on the auto double kick, I would love for that to stay on as you move your way through the presets. But then, kind of like the edge of the ride cymbal, would love for that to also transfer over. So these are things that can all be improved upon, guys. These, not like Solemn Tones, but everyone. Just keep in mind, the first generation of something will always come with the ability to improve upon. So, but no, let's go back to this with that double kick there. That's monstrous. And then, yeah, let's try out some of these effects. I thought these were super cool. Now let's get to one of the things that I think is really special about this library, and especially if you are into doom metal, they have a kit called the Doom Kit. And it's nice that you can select it from the preset drop-down menu. Another way to access it, if you went to every individual drop-down menu of every instrument and selected the very last one, Doom Snare, etc. The same effect will happen, which I'm about to show you. But the whole UI changes, or the GUI changes to what I believe they call is a Doom hellscape. And I have to agree. And so, buckle up for this one. This is crazy. If you have headphones on, that low end is bananas. Okay, so that's Doom Kit processed. And Doom Kit raw. Okay, it just doesn't have as much punch as obviously the processed one. So this would be the kit that if you really like the sound of it, this would be the one I'd recommend you start with if you're going to manipulate and edit it to customize it to your own personal tastes. Oh! We have a crash cymbal. Huh. That's interesting. So it's available. It's possible. So whatever we're doing here with the Doom Kit, let's get that. Unless they actually have a sampled ride cymbal for the Doom Kit. Let's go to the MIDI mapping and see what this actually is. Oh. All right, well, I'm confused. Because it technically shows that we have a crash left assigned to B2. But we're getting definitely a crash sample. So Yeah, would love to have that available on all the presets. Well, there was kind of a long-winded way to talk about eKit compatibility with this library, and sorry if that wasn't the most entertaining or informative preset playthrough, but it definitely should give you the idea of what this kit has to offer and where these in particular shells and cymbals can go as far as a direction. So why don't we hop back over to the desk so I can show you guys a few things that I consider the bells and whistles of this library, including two functions you can do in here that are, in my opinion, some of the best available functions within a drum library, or features. Anyway, let's get to it. So moving on from what we've learned about using this library as an eKit player, let's talk about some of the really awesome functions that are available within the mixing menu of this plugin. So when you click on Mixer, the first thing you're addressed with is a pretty decent amount of faders and knobs available to start really custom tuning individual channels like your kick and your snare and your tom. Keep in mind though that if you want to change the samples, like let's say the kick drum, you want to change it to another provided kick drum, you have to go back to the main page, select your kick drum from there, and then go back into the mixer page to start manipulating the individual parameters that you have available there. One of the first things you'll notice is there are 3 individual faders per sampled instrument. So if we look at the kick drum here, we could see a CL, an OH, and an RO. Those represent the mics that were used to capture that in particular sample. CL stands for close, which is the mic placement that is closest to the head of the shell or the cymbal. OH stands for overhead, and then RO stands for room. And you can really make each individual instrument sound completely different just by drastically changing the fader values, and you might as well just take it and run with it, experiment with it, because the sounds are kind of endless as far as what you can create. Right below the faders, you have some simple panning knobs if you want to move your toms around so they resemble a little bit more of a live action drum kit. And then right below that, we have a little graphic window that shows you exactly which instrument you're manipulating at the time. Right beside that is your one-shot loader. So if you have your own beloved one-shots that you want to add to any kit that you customize, this is where you would do that. Then each individual instrument gets their own 4-band EQ that you can use to manipulate the sound. And then a saturation knob, which really just kind of cranks up compression on the individual instrument that you're working on. As I will always suggest for anyone that's interested in customizing, you can't do anything wrong. Well, you can make a drum kit not have sound. But other than that, just twist knobs and pull faders. You can't go wrong. You might discover a sound that is just perfect for the current track that you're working on. And then if we go all the way over, you're gonna notice this has global next to these 3 faders. If you pull these faders down, it adjusts the microphone for the entire kit. So if you have something like the kick drum selected and then you come over to these global faders and start pulling with them, you are going to be affecting the entire kit, not just the kick drum. So keep that in mind. One of the quirky things that I found while working with the faders section of the mixer window, when you click the mute button on an in particular instrument, that channel doesn't get selected. But if you hit the solo button, that channel suddenly highlights and you are now on that in particular channel. I would personally love to see that if you're working on an in particular instrument and you select the kick drum, like let's say at the top of the menu, then that would be the only way that you can change in between the instruments. Because while I was building out my custom kit, as I was kind of clicking between different solo options to get an overall sense of how my mix was going, I wouldn't realize that that instrument was selected, and then I would just go straight back to the EQ band and start changing values there, not realizing that I was changing a totally different instrument than I was working on. And then the last request that I would love to see in this library in a future update is within this mixing menu, I would love for there to be just an overall global slider available for each individual instrument. I know you can do that from the main page. I'm gonna use the toms for an example. If I wanted to manipulate just the overall volume of, let's say, the high tom, I then have to go in and pull mic faders for that high tom and not an overall global volume switch. Because if we go back to the main page, we only have a toms volume fader, which will affect all the toms incorporated with your kit, not just the high tom. And then, like I said earlier, with the exaggerated value changes when you click on an in particular fader, it does make leveling individual instruments a little bit of a nuisance and frustrating to get that perfect mix that you're going for. Before we move on from this page, I want to say one of the two features that I think sounds the best in this drum library compared to other drum libraries that I've used is number one, the tuning knob. It really feels like when you drop the tuning of, let's say, a snare drum, it sounds to me as if they actually sampled that snare drum, just tuned down like a couple cents at a time. I do believe that it actually is digital pitch shifting within the plugin itself, and it's not actually sampled snares dropped or tuned up. But to me, in my ears, this is actually some of the cleanest and best pitch shifting of instruments within a drum library that I've ever heard. Now we're going to move on to the last section of this library that I'm going to talk about, and that's the effects page. And every effect that you see on this page is the full kit bust to this effect. So when you manipulate the individual effects on this page, you are going to be affecting the entire kit. So it starts off with a 3-band equalizer, which no complaints really there, because if you want to manipulate the EQ even further, you'll likely just do that with a plugin with inside your DAW. The drive effect you see here is a little bit more kind of like a saturation limiter. This effect in particular is just going to add some extra harmonic value to your overall kit sound, because you can really crank up the saturation, or you can change it to clipping and just create some very unique sounding drums. And then the next effect is dynamics, which is essentially just a compressor. And I do love that they give you the option to increase the threshold of when that compression's kicking in, and then also allowing you to subtly tune the mix of that compressor into your overall mix of the kit. Now, this next effect that closes off the chain over here is my second really high marks effect that's available in this library. It's the reverb. I think this reverb sounds so freaking good. I would really love to know what reverb they actually modeled this one off of, because it makes me happy, really happy that this reverb is available in this drum library. It makes me so sad that this reverb is not available to use on other things like vocals or pianos. Oh my God, this reverb is just so clean, and it's so resonant, and it's so rich. It is hands down easily one of the best reverbs that has ever come with a drum library. What would be so excellent is if we had the capability of applying these effects, especially the reverb, to just individual instruments, and particularly the overheads, and more importantly, the snare drums. So yes, if you pick up Ragnar Drums, definitely one of the first things that you should play around with is this reverb. It will make you smile, and I truly believe that. It's chef's kiss. So if you've made it this far in the video, thank you for sticking it out. I know I had a lot to say, and I know a lot of it seemed negative and a little bit curmudgeon, but I promise you that these critiques are being brought from the best intentions of my heart, and it is just so that we can hopefully see improvements in those in particular areas to make using this library at your e-kit a more seamless and flawless experience. Other than that, I certainly think this library should be on your radar. If you're an e-kit player and everything I mentioned over here doesn't bother you, then you absolutely should grab it. Otherwise, if you are an e-kit player and that kind of seemed like a little bit of a turnoff, hopefully we have that updated patch coming soon. And then once that is available, you better just get right over to Solemn Tones and pick this up, because this is a drum library that is going to make your set of tools for making your songs epic and huge. It's definitely a drum library that I'm going to be using going forward, especially if and when the E-kit quirks get ironed out. My name is CK. Arcane Arrow is my music project. I'm so glad that you're here. Thanks for stopping by, and I will catch you in the next video. Peace.